Hey there, I'm Ken. This is Canadian Retro Things. Welcome. I have a confession to make. A few videos ago, I lied to you. Do you recognize this Commodore 64? It was in a video I did a little while ago about having the 3 Commodore 64s and trying to get them working. Do you remember when I said this? There it is. That is the case from computer number 2 combined with the board of computer number 3 to make one fully working C64. Well, unfortunately, unbeknownst to me, that was a lie. This is not a completely working Commodore 64. I tested most everything on this computer. Unfortunately, the one thing on this computer that does not work is the one thing I did not test. How did I come across this, you're asking? Well, let's do a little reenactment just to see how I found out what's not working on here. But before we do that, I gotta give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay. PCBWay, where you can get PCBs printed starting as low as $5 for 10 PCBs. Do you have a project ready to print, but have been putting it off? Well, time is running out on the big Christmas sale. That's right, until December 31st, 2023, you can get up to 50% off a PCB order. 50% off. Is that enough incentive to get that project printed? So act now because time is running out. For more details and other savings, visit PCBWay today at www.pcbway.com. What do I want to do today? Well, I've got my Commodore 64 hooked up. I've got my disk drive, my 1541. I think what I want to do today is play some good old-fashioned retro adventure games. So, the first thing I'm going to do is put in my Retro Rewind freeload cartridge. This is a fast load cartridge available from Retro Rewind. Link in the description. And there we go. It's loaded up. The disk is in the drive. And now Commodore run stop and device not present error. Forgot to turn the disk drive on. Oops. And again, there we go. Wait a second. The disk drive's not running. So unfortunately, when I said that this Commodore 64 was completely working, it was, unbeknownst to me, a lie. Because the port that runs the disk drive is not working. Fortunately, it's very fortuitous that the other day in the mail, I received this. Frank sent me this from Retro Rewind. It is the diagnostic cart wiring harness to test everything on the computer. So I guess now I can give that a use right away. So I've got the diagnostic cartridge and I've got everything else. So first thing to do is remove the keyboard. Serial port. That is what's not working. And this will plug into the keyboard. I believe it goes this way. And I believe I would be wrong. That's backwards. But I did talk to Frank about that, and he told me that all of the ones that he's selling are keyed to go in the proper way, as well as the unit does have a protection circuit just in case it's put on backwards or misaligned. User port, cassette port, And of course, diagnostic cartridge. And now I just have to figure out how to hook all the wires up. Oh, and look who has come to visit. This is my new kitten. This is Dash. He likes to play with all the electronic cords. Loves the cords that hang off of everything. All right, I'm going to be right back after I double check that I'm hooking everything up properly. Now, whether I plugged any of these in backwards or not, I don't know. I guess we'll find out if it something completely fails on it. So let's take this over, plug it back in so I can see the results, and yeah, then see if I actually hook this up properly. And here we go with the diagnostic test. Serial port and user port, bad. It's saying U2 is bad. So, is it that U2 is bad on this? So it's giving me 3 bad RAM chips and U2 being bad. Interesting. Well, I think because initially, right off the bat, it said U2 was bad, so let's listen to the diagnostic cartridge and pull U2 out of there and see what happens if I put a non-working one in there. I've got the board out of the case. I have removed the shielding off the back of the board, so don't need that anymore. Now, what do we know right now? We know that the serial bus is not working. And we know from my cleverly disguised forgetting to turn the disk drive on when I went to load up a game there. That was not a mistake at all. I really intended to do that. We know that the serial bus is able to tell when the disk drive is connected, which rules out pin 1 on here. Pin 6 and 2, if you look at the schematic, those are the reset pin and the ground pin. So we can rule those out. So it's going to be either pin 3, 4, or 5. Now, pin 3, 4, and 5 go through FB7, FB8, and FB9 here, and then up to U2. And it was showing that U2 was bad, so I'm going to assume that that is a very good possibility that that is wrong, or bad, because it is, after all, a MOS chip. So we just have to flip the board over and look at the back of this board that probably, since everything, all the tabs were still soldered on there, that looked like original solder blobs. Nobody's probably looked at the back of this board for 40-ish years. Anyway, we're going to unsolder all of these pins here. So, of course, we start out with a whole lot of flux. And then get desoldering. The chip is out. The socket's in place. Now you remember when I said in a previous video that sometimes I like to put the chip into the socket before I put the socket into the board, just to make sure all the pins and everything line up and makes it a little easier to push the socket in. As was pointed out to me, I'm very lucky that in the time that I've done that, that often when you've removed a chip, there might be a little bit of solder left on some of the pins, that you don't accidentally, when you do that, solder the chip straight into the socket. So Yeah, I don't put a chip in there anymore. I just put the socket right into the board. Now that it's in there, we shall solder it into place. I have a 6526 from my working Commodore 64 in here. So let's see if it'll load something from disk. Disk drive's running. There you go. It was U2. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I am going to hook up my diagnostic harness to this again. And yeah, see if it says there's anything else wrong with this. But yeah, this is working now. There we go. Ready to play some Pool of Radiance. I now have 2 computers I can play it on. There we go. I have everything hooked back up to the C64. Let's see if everything is working properly now. And okay, I think I may have celebrated a little bit too early. Huh. Well, it's still showing U9, U11, and U22 is bad, and looks like it's freezing up in the screen RAM test. So I think there might be some bad RAM chips in here. Unfortunately, unlike some of the bigger YouTubers, I don't have a big stockpile of spare parts. So this is my completely working Commodore 64 that I've already taken U2 out of to test in that other board. So now I must desolder one of the RAM chips here so that I can take something where I know the RAM chips are working and try it out over there. I have the RAM chip out of my other board. Now I'm going to start with this board. The first thing I'm going to do is take out U9 because just because that's the first one. So that is U9 is this one right here. So boop 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 this. I have here the chip from U9 on the non-working board. Going into this, my non-working board. So that is currently in position U21. So if that chip is bad, it should show me a bad chip on U21. Interesting. So it's showing me a bad user port bad U1 and U2 with that chip. Let me put my original chip back in, and we'll see what happens. Okay, that doesn't appear to be showing any problems whatsoever. So it looks like U9 might have been the problem. I did actually desolder all three of those chips before I reset up over here to do the testing, but looks like I maybe should have just done U9. Try that one more time just to be doubly sure that I put the chip in there properly. Well, I think maybe I just didn't put the chip in there properly. I'm going to let this run for a little while, and yeah, we'll check back in. So I left this to run for a while. I come back and I see that it has frozen on RAM test number 2 on the second round. So, that makes me think that it very well could be this chip that was in U9. Let's just reset it and see what happens. See if it gets stuck there again. Nope, did not get stuck this time on RAM test 2. I'll let this run again for a little bit and see if it gets stuck again. But this is making me think that there's definitely a problem with this memory chip. Seems to not be a consistent problem though, at least on this board. Alright, it does not seem to be getting stuck on a test this time, but I'll let it run for a while again. I went away for about 15 minutes, come back, and it is again frozen in RAM test number 2. So I am going to guess that that chip is bad. So it's time to check to see if the other ones that were showing as bad are also bad. So I am going to just test those and I'll report back to you if I find anything wrong with them. I tested the other chips. They're working fine. They're back in this board. I've got a working chip from my other board in here. So now it's time to test this out. I'm not holding out a lot of hope that this is what fixed it. And it didn't. Same thing. Freezing up in the screen RAM. Now, why did I not think that this was going to work? Because the chip that was testing bad had to go for quite a while before it tested bad. I think it's right on that cusp of being a bad chip. As it heats up, then something's going wrong with it. What's happening here is happening immediately. So I don't know where. I'll have to think about what to do next. There we go, another roller coaster of an attempted Commodore 64 repair. I've really got to stop the early celebrating because whenever I do that, I seem to find something else wrong with one of these computers. So again, I'm having a weird situation of the diagnostic cartridge freezing up at some point. I tested out the chips that it said were bad, and none of them, well, one of them seemed to be slightly bad, but that didn't make a difference. So I'm going to guess that it's something else in there, maybe one of the logic chips that runs the memory or something like that. Maybe it's one of the other memory chips are completely bad. I don't know. I'm going to do a little more research, try to figure this out. But I'm going to stop here for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget that a like, a subscribe, and a comment below are all things that help the channel out a lot. So, yeah, I'm going to go do some research, and I will see you next time.